A massacre in a single night. Who would dare to face the God of Israel? Imagine, right now, the deadly silence that hovers before judgment. Think of thousands of soldiers, trained men, warriors accustomed to blood and destruction, asleep with the arrogance of those who believe they are invincible. Then, in an instant, it's all over. No battle, no fanfare, no single blow of the sword. Just death, quick, silent, and final. This is not a story of ordinary men. It is about the God who watches from the heavens and does not tolerate affront. How many kings have challenged the Most High and fallen? How many armies dared to march against the throne of justice and were destroyed? That night, the world saw the answer. Whoever dares to stand up against the living God must be ready to face the judgment that descends like a relentless shadow. Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, was no ordinary fool. He commanded the largest empire of the time, known for its brutality. His armies crushed nations as if they were dust. He laughed at the resistance of the people and mocked anyone who dared not to bow. When he arrived at the gates of Jerusalem, his confidence was at its peak. He openly mocked the God of Israel. In his words, no God had stopped his march until that moment. Why would that one be different? His provocations were not just military. He directly affronted the name of God. The threatening letters sent to Hezekiah were clear: surrender or be destroyed. The enemy army surrounded Jerusalem. To the people, the end seemed inevitable. It was only a matter of time before the walls collapsed and the massacre began. However, Sennacherib made the fatal mistake that would change the course of history. He didn't just challenge men. He raised his voice against the Lord of hosts himself. And when an insolent man affronts the Creator, the outcome is never favorable for the arrogant one. That day ended with tension suffocating Jerusalem. But when night fell, a divine decree had already been issued in the heavens. Human pride was about to be crushed. The heavens would not remain silent in the face of the affront. The world was about to witness what happens when God decides to intervene directly, and there are no forces, alliances, or strategies that can stop his sovereign will. Hezekiah humbles himself before God, the prayer that changed the destiny of a nation. Hezekiah was not just any king. He knew that his people's only hope lay not in armies or walls. When he received Sennacherib's threats, he did not despair as others would. Instead, he made the wisest and most powerful decision possible. He went to the house of the Lord. He spread the threatening letters before God and cried out for justice. In that silent temple, an invisible war began. It was not with bows or spears, but with tears and supplications. He recognized the greatness of God and pleaded for his name to be honored among the nations. While the people slept in fear and the walls shook under the Assyrian siege, Hezekiah's voice reached the heavens. He didn't just ask for deliverance for himself. He asked God to show the world that only He is the Lord. This was the key. His prayer was not selfish or driven solely by fear. It was a declaration of faith. And God heard. The answer came quickly through the prophet Isaiah, the messenger of truth. Thus says the Lord, do not be afraid because of the words you have heard. The war was already decided on the celestial plane. Isaiah announced God's sentence with clarity and authority. Sennacherib would not set foot in Jerusalem. He would not shoot arrows, he would not raise shields, he would not build ramps against the walls. The way he came, he would return humiliated. These words seemed impossible in the face of the approaching siege. But when God speaks, human logic bends. The Lord had taken over the battle. Now it was a matter of time before the enemy tested the weight of the divine hand. While the people were still breathing under fear, the atmosphere changed. Something invisible hovered over the enemy camp. What the eyes couldn't see, Hezekiah's heart knew. God was at work. The king's confidence turned into hope for Jerusalem. Everyone hoped for deliverance, but no one imagined how brutal, quick, and unprecedented it would be. God would not just save, He would crush. The deadly shadow, the angel of the Lord descends with judgment. Then night came, The Assyrian camp, filled with tents, was silent. The soldiers, exhausted after days of intimidation and arrogance, slept peacefully, confident that victory would come with the dawn. They did not know that this would be their last rest. No warning, no thunder, no foreshadowing. The angel of the Lord descended with a clear mission: to eliminate. No general saw it. No soldiers reacted. When the divine presence crosses the field of men, there is no possible defense. In a matter of hours, 185,000 warriors were dead. No fight, noiseless, just the sound of the absolute silence of death. Think about the horror of that morning. What the few survivors saw when they woke up would never leave their minds. Bodies piled up. Strong men, known for their cruelty, lying like dry leaves blown by the wind. Fear took over those who were still breathing. What had they faced? It was not a human army. It was no ordinary plague. It was God's own judgment, which swept away Assyria's pride with an invisible and lethal hand. The news spread like wildfire. The terror was not restricted to that death field. The surrounding nations listened. The impossible had happened. Sennacherib, once unbeatable, now fled in shame and silence. He who mocked the God of Israel now tasted the bitter taste of humiliation. Their confidence, built on the fear and blood of other nations, was crumbling. Jerusalem, without firing a single arrow, had won. The Assyrian destruction that night served an eternal purpose. It wasn't just punishment. It was a demonstration. The world needed to see and remember: the God of Israel is not like the idols of other nations. He lives, observes, and acts at the right time. The massacre was an irrefutable declaration. Those who trust in the Lord will never be put to shame, but those who rise up against him will know the weight of his judgment. The legacy of deliverance. When God defends his name, after the massacre, peace returned to Jerusalem. But it wasn't just external peace. The people now had engraved in their hearts a deep and reverent fear. They saw what it means to trust God in the midst of adversity. Hezekiah, the king who prayed, became the symbol of true faith. His decision to humble himself and seek the Lord brought salvation not only to himself, but to the entire nation. Jerusalem was spared, not by human force or strategies, but because God decided to act in favor of those who call on him in truth. Sennacherib, on the other hand, met a tragic end. Upon returning to his land, humiliated and without answers, he was murdered by his own children in the temple of his god Nisroch. Ironically, the man who dared to mock the Lord ended his days in a shameful and brutal way, precisely where he believed he was protected. This divine irony closed the cycle of justice. The proud were cast down, and the just was exalted. That night's event became unforgettable for future generations. To this day, scholars try to explain what happened. Some suggest sudden illnesses, others natural calamities. But the Bible is clear. It was the angel of the Lord. The mechanism doesn't matter. What matters is the origin. God intervened. When the Most High decides to act, there are no walls, numbers, or strategies that can stop him. The massacre of the 185,000 is the eternal testimony to the sovereign and indisputable power of the God who rules over all nations. History repeats itself today in other ways. Men continue to defy God with arrogance and disdain. But the lesson is clear. No one who stands against the Lord will remain standing for long. The Assyrian massacre was not just about the victory of Jerusalem. It was about God's name being honored and defended. When he moves, the earth shakes. When he judges, everyone knows. The Lord is God, and there is none other than him. Thanks for getting this far. If this story impacted you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Together, let's keep alive the stories that reveal God's power and justice. Until next time.